What's up, everyone? Zikrik here. If you're like me, you've been holding on to hope for New World for probably a little too long now. But I just saw something come out the other day that, for the first time in a long time, gave me some hope as far as the future and the direction of the game. And I'll give it to you. This is long-term hope for sure, but at least it's something, because I haven't seen anything that's given me hope for a fundamental change in direction of the game for the last couple months. The game's literally been unplayable since the February patch for a significant portion of the players. I know not everyone is experiencing the desync and rubber band issues, but for me and for thousands of other players out there, it's the top trending threads on the forums. You can see hundreds and hundreds of video examples of it on YouTube. Here's my own that I threw up out of frustration just like a week after that February patch. And the weapon swap bug, which remains unfixed and is now masked by a bugged weapon swap queue system, on top of the increase in desync that resulted from them trying to fundamentally change the movement and combat, which no one was asking for. The last thing that was keeping some of the core players around, like me, especially ones that were really into the PvP, was the combat and the movement. And up until the February patch, that still felt okay, even though, there's dupes destroying the economy, even though we have to fucking play a shitload more to get our gear to 625 now to compete. Some of us were willing to swallow those pills in order to get access to this fundamentally different form of PvP, where you're kind of it's this beautiful hybrid of MMO, RPG, FPS, MOBA, where you're able to aim and dodge and use reaction-based skill and timing to avoid attacks and set yourself up for your own attacks. And it's just a fundamentally different form of combat and like super fun and enjoyable. And you really can't go to another game that I know of and find that kind of PvP. Back to the original point is there was an article released a couple days ago by Bloomberg that seemed to fly a bit under the radar. I haven't really seen anyone talk about this, but it seems very relevant to the future of New World. And so I wanted to bring it to you guys and talk to you about it a little bit, just because I find it very interesting. And it seems like, to me, this has been the problem for New World since the beginning. All right, so let's take a look at the article here. So the article by Bloomberg, written by Jason Schreier and Priya Anand, are referencing this gentleman, Mike Frazzini, a longtime Amazon Inc. employee who helped start Amazon Game Studios, is stepping down. They reference him being head of the division. So this leads me to believe this gentleman is literally for all of Amazon Game Studios, not just New World. This gentleman, Mike Frazzini, was essentially the director, let's call it, or the lead, or the person who's calling the shots. And I'm going to read through the whole article in a minute. But the most interesting thing to me right off the bat, looking at this article, is that this guy is not a gamer. And the problems that have arisen from the game feels like whoever is calling the shots has no idea how video games work and is simply making financial decisions and pushing new content that no one's asking for over making a working game. It says right here, Frazzini, who previously worked in the book section of Amazon, book section of Amazon, was a relative game novice when he became head of the division. So you promoted a guy from the book section who doesn't play video games as the director of Amazon Game Studio. All right. Some employees had criticized him for veering too far from game making's traditional playbook. We'll talk about that in a minute. This is the most important part. One former Amazon Game Studios manager, who asked to remain anonymous because they weren't authorized to speak publicly, said that Frazzini's leadership of the unit suffered because he had not had prior experience in gaming. No shit. Someone who's never played video games is struggling to lead the video games division of Amazon. And like, nothing against this Mike Frazzini guy, dude. I'm sure he's a fine dude, and nothing against him personally, but like, if you've never played games and you worked in the book section of Amazon, I don't know who's making the decision to promote this guy. I don't even think it's his fault. Like, who is promoting this guy to the head of Amazon Games Division, a brand new division costing hundreds of millions of dollars a year? I don't know. That just seems like the wrong call from the beginning. But anyways, it seems very apparent that from several inside sources throughout this article, this gentleman is not a gamer himself, doesn't really understand the scope of what it takes to make a video game, let alone an MMO, which might be the most complex type of video game you can make. Basically, I felt like the whole time it's being led by some business guy that's making short-term financial decisions versus making long-term decisions for the player that are going to be good for the game long-term, and they're going to keep the player base around. And I think fundamentally the flaw of making short-term business decisions is if you sacrifice the quality of your game, which is very much what New World has done, in my opinion, taking a game that was basically amazing to a point where it's literally unplayable by the small percentage of people that are still trying to play it. And you realize that any short-term business decision to push new content to try to keep people engaged is, if you're sacrificing the gameplay and the quality of your game for that, that is going to backfire in the long term, where you are going to actually lose your player base and then no one's going to be playing the game. And so I think New World leadership has fundamentally made the wrong decision, basically all the way down the line since launch, on what they're prioritizing and focusing on versus what they really need to prioritize and focus on to make their game successful and keep their player base engaged, and then deliver quality content that's tested, that's hopefully as close to bug-free as you can get before releasing it. All right, so I'm just going to read through the article. It's a really short article. I linked it in the description, and I'm going to just pause to talk about a few things. This article was published March 25th, 2022, so just a few days ago. So Mike Frazzini, a longtime Amazon Inc. employee who helped start Amazon Game Studios, is stepping down. The executive told staff Friday that he was leaving to focus on family, said Amazon spokesman Ryan Jones. So stepping down, pretty, PR term. Who knows what actually happened, but in the end, he is no longer the lead of Amazon Game Studio. Mike was there at the beginning of Amazon Games, and his leadership and perseverance helped build the games business from the ground up, Jones said in a statement. Our recent successes with New World and Lost Ark, very questionable, very questionable. You didn't make this game. Are the result of the long-term customer-focused vision for games he helped establish. We are very grateful for all of his contributions and wish Mike the very best. Amazon Game Studios was an expensive endeavor for the e-commercial giant, costing hundreds of millions of dollars a year, but for years failed to produce hit games. For years. Hundreds of $1 million. Years. Frazzini, who previously worked in the book section of Amazon, was a relative game novice when he became head of the division. Now, again, who made that decision? Some employees had criticized him for veering too far from game making's traditional playbook, Bloomberg reported last year. And so, this could mean a ton of different stuff. Who knows which decisions this guy actually influenced and called the shot on and which ones he didn't. But it's very clear that New World started with a very clear vision of what they wanted to do in making a very PvP-focused MMO. And somewhere along the way, they lost that vision and have been trying to appeal to the casual player and the masses, and in the process have fundamentally dismantled what made the game amazing in the first place. After canceling and even once unreleasing games at various stages of development, so this tells me there's been a fully scrapped project. So of these hundreds of millions of dollars, there's actually been a fully scrapped game where they had it somewhere along the development path and they said, well, this one's totally fucked. All that is sunk cost. Let it go. The company did have a breakout hit this fall with its release of online PC game New World. At a conference soon after the game's launch, Amazon Chief Executive Officer Andy Jassy said that gaming could be the company's largest entertainment category. I would love that, dude. I would love all the money I spend on fucking Amazon Prime to go to making sweet games, dude. That would be sick. Following New World's warm reception, former Amazon boss Jeff Bezos tweeted, "After many failures and setbacks in gaming, we have a success. Don't give up no matter how hard it gets." And I don't disagree with this statement. I kind of like it. And I really hope Mr. Bezos stays true to his word and doesn't give up on New World. Because I think with new leadership and with a real gamer in that seat that understands the nuances of RPGs and especially MMOs and how they're played and what keeps people around, I really think that New World does have a future and does have hope. But even New World's success faded after its initial release. Yep, we all know the story. The game had 913,000 concurrent players late September and now has about 26,500, according to data from Steam charts. If you're paying attention and looking, like the other night I looked, like sometime like 9-10 p.m. in West US, and it was at like 12,000. And so these are generous. These are like peak numbers right now. One former Amazon Game Studio manager who asked to remain anonymous because they weren't authorized to speak publicly said that Frazzini's leadership of the unit suffered because he had not had prior experience in gaming. Amazon is a company that often assumes that if you can succeed in one category, you can succeed in another. This is just not true, though. You know, like if you're a fucking Olympic basketball player, that does not make you an Olympic swimmer. Like, that's like saying if you can succeed at one skill, you can succeed at another. That's true if you have another 10 years to practice that skill to give you the same 10 years of experience you had for the first skill. So if this guy, you know, had played, he left Amazon Books and got into Amazon Gaming and had then played video games and been a gamer for the last 10 years, had put in well over his 10,000 hours, true. But to just jump skill sets and assume that you can succeed is like, I don't know. That's just a flaw. That's just not how shit works, baby. It's just not life right there. Yeah, this is the fundamental issue right here. And so whoever, made the initial decision to hire this guy, I think is, if you had to blame someone, that's probably who it is. And staffers in the unit felt that he underestimated the complexities of the medium. And yeah, so like we were saying earlier, like MMORPG is probably the most complex medium you could attempt to make in gaming. You have the fundamental element of making a compelling single-player RPG game that's immersive and got great combat and great story and great progression and feels good. People want to log in and play it. And then you got to figure out how to interconnect that experience with other players in a compelling format. And the best MMOs make that experience feel fluid, where the line between single player and multiplayer is very blurred, and you're kind of just flowing between this beautiful single player role-playing experience and interacting with other players that are on that same journey. And yeah, it's like one of the most complex things you could tackle. And so it takes, even the most experienced game studios, like years and crazy amounts of resources and time to try to make a successful one of these. And just look at history. Like, it's really hard to do a good one, right? There's only been like a couple, there's been many like good MMOs, but there's only been a couple like really good MMOs, right? That have withstood the test of time, that have kept players around and engaged for years and years to come. And I think those really represent kind of the mark of what makes a game good. And those are the games you should look at as examples of what did these games do that were so remarkable that kept people around, and how can we implement some form of that into this new type of MMO we're trying to make. So in conclusion, basically what I'm saying is, I really think that there has been a fundamental flaw in the direction leadership has been taking New World. And it seems like this gentleman, Mike Frazzini, was the lead, the head, the shot caller in the end that makes the final call on all of the decisions for Amazon games. So New World, Lost Ark, game that got scrapped, future games in development. And a lot of us gamers have sort of intuitively felt that disconnect where we're playing the game and we're looking at the things the development studio is focused on and what they're changing. And we're like, you're like at a loss for words. He's like, is anyone actually using logic or like actually playing the game to see what's going on versus just like, using random number metrics that they get from their systems, or, not giving a shit about that and just caring about the financial numbers. And I think fundamentally the flaw has been leadership has prioritized new content and hype over game stability and compelling gameplay. That is the flaw in development that has caused New World to go from, almost 1 million concurrent players at release to some tiny fraction of that today, and the game being completely unplayable for some portion of the population that wants to keep playing it. Dude, if I could log on New World and play it pre-February patch, fuck, I would do it in a heartbeat. But I literally haven't been able to play since this February patch because my input is not reliable. It's not even like I'm playing a game. I click and react to do something, and that's not what happens on screen. And that it'd be like playing a game like pre-alpha. It's such a joke you can't play a game that doesn't have reliable input. It's not even worth playing. So that's where I'm at with New World, and I might end up making a video that goes a little deeper into that side of it, because I usually don't give a shit about stuff like this. I'm just focused on my own jam, but this game is something I'm super passionate about. I had really high hopes for not just the future of the game itself, but my future in the game and creating content alongside of that, all of which has basically been completely shit canned with how stuff has gone. And so, there are a lot of people like me that have invested a significant amount of time and energy and emotion into the game that are, for the last couple months been at a bit of a loss, where it's like, all right, like that super cool game that I absolutely loved that I was going to play for the next couple years, maybe, it's just like basically gone, or like I can't play it. So that fucking sucks. Right. And so we're all just kind of like looking around like, oh, there's Lost Ark, there's like Elden Ring. It's like, yeah, these are cool games, but they're different games. They're fundamentally different games. And so it would just be dope if New World was a working game and had a leadership team that was committed to playing the game themselves and had a vision for the game themselves that was focused on delivering a fundamentally good game first, and then focused on new and exciting content and changes after that. And so the reason I made this video was just that this was like the first shred of hope that I've seen in a while for how New World might get better in the future, is hopefully they put a person in that position that has a ton of gaming experience. Dude, I want a fucking gamer there, and put some financial dude as his wingman, to be in his ear, talking to him about the numbers, but let him call the shots as a gamer. And that's going to give you a successful game that gamers are going to play for the long term. And that's how you're going to make revenue. That is the best revenue decision. This short-sighted content for the price of breaking the game, so you drive your whole player base away. Fucking, if you're making $50 a player off of microtransactions a month and you have 0 players, fucking $0, bro. It's easy math, super easy math. But if you have 913,000 players and everyone spends $1 a month, dude, you're fucking gravy, bro. Like, it's just such a difference in philosophy. And I really hope whoever's stepping into that leadership position, Amazon has looked at what's gone wrong and really learned from it, and is looking to put someone in that position that can really thrive and help the game succeed long term, and help the game feel like someone in the development team actually gives a shit about it and is actually playing it. Because I know for sure there are people on the New World development team that feel completely handcuffed to this whole situation. There may have been some people around since like alpha, when Stagger was still in the game, and they've just watched this slow decline of skill-based combat and more bugs getting introduced, all for the sake of new content that they don't even necessarily want to make. They're just trying to finish the original game that they never finished, making it just a super fun, balanced game with great combat and in a beautiful world. Yeah. Yeah. And I'm not like a super influential person, and so I have no idea who will even see this video and if it will make a difference. But I just wanted to put this out there for those of you that are like me, that are fucking hanging on to New World with like that last bit of hope, just like praying something's going to change. This might be the fundamental change we've been looking for. And so hang in there. I'm going to keep hanging in there and keeping my ear to the ground on what's going on with New World. And hopefully at some point they'll fix the combat to where I can actually play again. That would be awesome. All right. I will catch you guys in the next one. Peace.